Thanks for joining Million Dollar Breakdown, our biggest verdicts from the attorneys that won them. And once again, we're unpacking a remarkable case with a substantial reward. And it's great to have with us Morgan & Morgan attorney Ryan Sainz, who recently won a massive verdict in a Tampa case involving a then 28-year-old victim who was injured in a car crash. Ryan, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get the ball rolling and start with a quick summary of the case.
Yeah, this case was one that, on paper looks like an average run-of-the-mill type of rear-end crash that everybody sees as they're driving on the road. Young girl with her dog in the car stopped at a red light, and a woman with her children in the back seat, distracted by a cell phone, hit the gas a little too early and ran right into the back of my client's vehicle, causing, some pretty decent damage to her car.
Right. I wonder if you could tell us about the pretrial offer, because there was one.
Abs- Absolutely. So, obviously, this case was one where she had spinal injuries to her neck, lower back, um, and she started with some conservative type of chiropractic care type of treatment. Initially, she didn't really have much by way of injections, and the offer was extremely low before we had to file a lawsuit. They were in the 20,000 or south range, and they were fluctuating between that 80 and $20,000 range, and obviously just wasn't something that we were willing to consider, or advising our young client who had forever injuries to accept.
Actually, can you let us know a little bit more about your client? I mean, what was her life like before the car accident?
Your very typical 20 something year old girl. Her life really, and this came out during her testimony. She was a girl that really loved her dog, loved hanging out with her friends. She went to work. Time on the weekends was spent going to the beach with her friends, or going out, or just taking her dog to a dog park. Pretty average run of the mill type of type of lifestyle, and this really derailed that. You see her during the time that she testified, and it was highly emotional. That a lot of her friendships kind of fell to by the wayside after this. Lost contact with her friends. They realized, hey, let's not call her anymore because she's going to probably tell us no. We're not. She's not going to be able to go. She's in too much pain.
When you look back at this case, what factors did this case primarily hinge on?
It's one of those factors that I look at in every single case. And one of the big things that I look at is, what's the property damage look like? Obviously, you don't need a lot of property damage in order to have a real serious lifetime injury, but that's something that a jury, your average individual that's on the side of the street, that's walking on the sidewalk, that's going to be on your jury, that's what they're going to look at. They're going to look for big property damage in order to determine if it's a big injury. Also, her age. She was extremely young. I mean, she was 29 at the time of the trial, but when the crash actually occurred, she was 24 years old. So when you're looking at those factors, she has a very long life to live with herniations in her neck and in her lower back. It's just not something that a 24-year-old is going to develop by their everyday lifestyle. They're young, vibrant, and not easily injured.
What would you consider the biggest obstacle that you faced in this case?
So when you look at a case like this, especially one that was interrupted by the COVID shutdown, where a lot of trials and the courthouses were stopped and there were no trials going on, and then once they reopen, you have this backlog of trials that are happening. I always felt that Stacee had a very good case, and it was one of those things where reassuring her that you have a very good case here. And really, the biggest hurdle that I see when it comes to something like this is time. Is the time that passes from when an injury occurs to when an individual is able to get into the courtroom. And I think that that's really where our firm is different from everyone else, in the fact that we don't need to rush a case to a courtroom. We don't need to rush a case to a settlement. We allow it to develop over time, allow the client to get the medical care that they need. And it's the time that really is the biggest factor when it comes to resolving a case or bringing a case to its conclusion, keeping everybody engaged and trusting the process that we're all going through together, really.
What considerations did you have during jury selection?
So during jury selection, it was clear to us that we had a young girl that was sitting at the table with us, and we had to convey to these potential jurors that really their job is to set aside anything that you see in the medical records because she did have a prior. She had a prior slip and fall that occurred approximately 8 months before this crash, and she had an MRI, and the MRI was clean. There was a clear objective change in her findings after this crash. And really honing in on this jury and these potential jurors from the beginning and letting them know that their job is to really appraise the change in this young lady from before versus after the crash. And it really doesn't matter what anybody says. It's the pictures, it's the evidence, it is the MRIs that they're going to see that they can clearly show the change from before and after. So conveying that from the beginning during jury selection is extremely important, and letting these jurors know, hey, you have a very finite responsibility sitting on this panel. And all these outside factors that may be thrown there by a defense or the insurance company, that is not, that is just there to simply confuse you. The clear change in her is what you need to focus on and appraise.
So once you went into the trial phase, how did you prepare for arguments that opposing counsel might actually bring?
Well, we knew from the beginning that our biggest argument that we were going to have to encounter was that prior slip and fall that she had 8 months before, where she took time off of work. She had a workers' compensation claim. She did go through physical therapy. She had orthopedic visits. We knew that that was going to be the point that the defense was going to hone in on and tell the jury, hey, look, this is what happened in the past. But really, that was more of a smokescreen than anything else, because the MRIs that we had there, which we don't have in every case, you don't have the benefit of an MRI that takes place such a close time to a motor vehicle crash. But we had that here. And that unique element is something that we were able to blow up to a jury and take that, what the defense thought was a strength, and make that their greatest weakness, because we absorbed that, we owned it, we accepted it, we invited the jury to consider it. And at the end of the day, they did. They saw it for what it was worth, and justice prevailed.
I was wondering how you and your team approached and prepared for both opening and closing arguments in this case.
No different than any other case, really. In opening statement, I really like to tell a story, and really my client's story. And what I tell clients all the time when they sit for a deposition is, this is not really your time to tell your story. This is your time to answer their questions. My job is to tell your story, and I take great pride in the preparation that comes with opening statements and closing arguments to tell the story as if the client was the one that was standing in front of that jury and telling them what happened, what they've gone through, reliving and bringing to life those medical records that this jury is going to read in the back room.
Right. And then finally, what did you learn from this case? Were there any takeaways from this case that was special?
You know, every trial is special, but this trial was extremely special because she was 24, 25 years old when this started, and really guiding and helping guide her through the process was extremely, extremely important to me. And, as lawyers, we're not supposed to take a personal vested interest in cases. We're supposed to remove ourselves from that emotion. But when you sit next to somebody for an entire week and you call them after they've had injections in their neck, and you talk to them as their pain is extremely is extremely debilitating, and it's impossible to not have that emotional attachment. And really, my big takeaway from this was compassion. The same compassion that we approach every single case with. I don't want to have that separation between a client and just having a job. And I think that that's another element that makes this firm so much different from everywhere else. The compassion with this client is extremely important. And, she had an extreme loss the next day after she got the verdict. She lost her father. And to show what the connection was is that I was invited to the ceremony because of the connection that we had with the family and with her. And there's just no greater feeling than a jury coming back and justifying this client's or this individual's pain and suffering and what they've had to endure since this crash, and telling them, we see you, it's worth something. And then that hug at the end with a client who felt vindicated is extremely special.
Right. Ryan, thank you very much for sharing what obviously was a very emotional case for you. Thank you very much, and congratulations again.